Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. As always, we thank our patrons who make this podcast possible. We couldn't do this without you, and we especially love, our monthly Zoom.
Yes.
That we do with our patrons. We get to interact with them, and that is the book club tier. We also have another one that we interact with our patrons called the I don't remember what the tier is called, but we do a monthly Q&A, and they send in their questions, and we answer the questions. So anyway, we thank our patrons, and this is our 200th episode.
Can you believe it?
No.
Can you? I sat last night
wild.
thinking about this, and I thought that's hard to imagine.
It really is. Yeah. So we've been doing it for 200, 200
That's
strong.
A lot. Yeah.
And here we are. So thank you
Yes.
guys for all your support and tuning in and
thank you so much.
encouragement over the years.
Yes.
So we thought for the 200th, it would be nice to give you lessons that we learned. So we're going to do 20 for our 200th episode. And Mom, I'll just let you take it away and give 10, and I'll give 10.
Okay. And don't panic. These are not going to be lengthy. They are just little tidbits of wisdom that we've learned along the way, because if you've been following us for any length of time, we were total novices starting out. We started out with nothing more than a little Chromebook.
Sitting in the living room on the couch with the dog clicking its nails across the floor and jingling jingling his
little collar
tags on his collar.
But we had a passion, and that passion was to encourage and help and stop this abuse. So with that being said, I listed 10 of the most important things that I've learned along the way doing these 200 podcasts with you. The first one is you don't have to be a pro to help. Often we do not attempt to help in different ways because we think we're not professional enough. We don't have what we need. We're not good of speech. We're not tech savvy, all of that. But the truth is, Jimmy and I began without any experience or equipment. We simply spoke from the heart, and that always works. Always. The second one is change takes time. I think when we want to create change, we want to see it happen abruptly. Jimmy and I, over the past 200 podcasts, have learned that those who have experienced abuse have multiple mountains to climb to get to that point of healing. And those mountain climbing experiences also take time, lots and lots of time. When we see increments of change in any way, we've learned to praise those and be thankful for them. Change takes time. The third one, there will always be abuse. I think in our naive way of thinking, we hoped that one day abuse would be eradicated from this earth. But, and I think, Jimmy, you'll agree quite heartily with me, the more we work in the field of abuse, the more we know there will always be those who abuse. Our job, however, is to do all we can to prevent as much as we can.
Yes.
The fourth one is some people will never get it. I don't care how hard you try, how much you teach, how much you speak, how many examples you show. There are still going to be people who simply don't get it. Keep on keeping on in spite of those who don't get it.
And I would say with that too, I've learned this in ministry over the years. don't waste your time trying to convince
Right.
people who are
Yeah.
not convincible.
Right.
I've spent
Yeah.
countless
Yep.
hours,
Right.
days, weeks pleading with people, begging people, teaching people, trying to get people to see something that is so black and white and so
Right.
clear to me.
Right.
And you're right. Some people just don't get
No,
it. So
they're-
you have
right.
to learn that, along the way. And when people are just, for whatever reason, they can't see it, they can't see the abuse or
Right.
whatever it is you're trying to teach them, move on.
Shake the dust off your
Yeah.
sandals and go on. Right. The fifth one is discouragement will come and go. This is heavy work. Any way you look at it, when you're dealing with abuse, when you're hearing stories of abuse, when you're hearing people's hurting so terribly much and you hear it day in and day out, it gets discouraging. When that happens, step away for a bit, take a breath, replenish yourself. That is not wrong to do. In fact, we're instructed. If we follow the example of Jesus, he went off on the other side of the water many times in his boat to simply pray or be alone. It's not sinful to do that.
Nope.
We need to do that. We need to take care of
I remind
ourselves.
people too, some of the stories of Jesus disappearing. There's one where his disciples come and they find him, and he almost seems a little bit irritated. They were trying to find him because people were really sick.
Right.
And
Right.
so one of the things that I tell people at church is when he went away and took time to himself, people were dying who he could have healed. And he still took time to
He
rest.
did because he needed that.
Right.
So, and we do too. The sixth one is this work is not a competition. Do your best. That is all that we should ask of each other. Don't play the comparison game. And through these 200 podcasts, we've seen some of that there seems to be a competitiveness of who has more followers on social media, whose platform is the biggest and the strongest, who is spread more widely. That's not the point. This is not a competition. This is a work from the heart. And when we do it that way, we remain leveled and our goals remain, where they should be. Our sights remain godly. So remember that always, or we need to remember that always. Giving the abused a platform to tell their story is powerful. Time and time again, Jimmy and I have had guests on this platform, and we've witnessed the power that is in giving those who have been abused a place to speak their voice. There is great power in that. There is great healing in that. This podcast has given that voice to so many people, and that's been a blessing and a joy. The eighth one is there really are some incredibly wonderful churches who are doing it right. Too often, or most often, always, the news is full of churches that are doing it wrong. They didn't do it right from the beginning. They hid abuse. They continue to hide abuse. And we can jump on that and say, I'm sick of churches, I'm walking away, I'm done. But that's not what we are saying here on this podcast, because as you know, with us, we have found those churches that are wonderful. There
Yeah,
are
they definitely
godly
exist.
people.
They're out there.
They are
Yeah.
out there. There are Christians who are alive, who are doing what they should be doing in the world of abuse and advocacy. If you've not found that group yet, keep searching. Churches are real. There are churches that are alive and churches who get it. Number 9, the pandemic impacted the world of abuse and advocacy in big ways. Any way you look at it, the pandemic affected everybody. I don't care who we are. In some way, shape, or form, our lives were impacted. Definitely, the world of abuse was impacted by the pandemic. Abuse rose. Advocates got tired. They withdrew. They began arguing, some among themselves, because life was so different. And it still is. We're still adjusting. So we need to have patience. We need to not give up. we need to put that discouragement in kind of a little safe place and move on, because life has gone on, it will go on. And, we need to accept the fact that, yes, some things changed, but we are still here. And we want you to know that about this podcast also. The 10th one that I have is there will always be a need for this podcast. Jimmy and I have talked about this countless times. At what point, how long can you talk about abuse? How many different ways can you hash it, talk about it, present it differently? But one thing we've learned is each day is new in the world of abuse. Each person carries their abuse and needs their healing in a different way. We need to educate in multiple different ways, and we know that this podcast is needed. And therefore, we're happy to say we are continuing beyond our 200th episode.
It may be 201, but we're going to make it.
I love it. Yes, we are. We are here. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Jimmy.
Yeah, I never dreamed that we would go to 200. When we first started, we didn't have a goal in mind.
No.
And like Mom said, we were sitting in my living room, sitting on the couch, no video, horrible audio. I didn't know anything about intros and outros.
I
and,
still don't.
So we put like kind of cheesy music for the intro and the outro. And we just kept improving. And then, we were like, well, we got to fund it somehow, because it was costing us money that we didn't have to keep it going. So then we went the Patreon route, and, it just kind of morphed from there. So 200 episodes later, here we are, and
I'm
still
so
going
happy
strong.
to say that. That is answered prayer.
So here's some lessons I learned. Lessons/tips. I don't know what to call them, but number 11, there is healing after abuse. I see so many people, survivors, give up, sadly, and I wish that they could just listen to the people who made it. And it is not an easy road, but my goodness, some of the people we've had on this podcast have been incredible. Even my own sister, we had Alex on here a couple times.
I was just going to say, Alex is an amazing young lady who was extremely broken 12 years ago, 15 years ago, and to see her now, is she totally healed? No, I don't know that healing from abuse is ever 100%. Do we really ever heal from trauma 100%?
And which goes back to your number 5, discouragement comes and goes. So
Right.
even, healing is pretty subjective, but you can get stronger, and you can get happier, and you can
find
get
a good
better.
place in life. Yes.
Yeah. Number 12, we learned just from interviewing so many people and from kind of doing this ourselves, and reaching, I know for me, I've reached multiple times stages of burnout. This is really important. Take time and space for yourself, because nobody else will do it for you.
Right.
Unfortunately, there are always, back to your point, there are always going to be people who are being abused. There are always going to be abusers. There are always going to be more people who need help than there are helpers. And so people will run you into the bloody ground if you allow it. So it's important to take that space for yourself. Take time with your family. Take time to laugh.
Right.
Take time to think about things that are non-abuse related, and kind of come back to a happy space. Number 13, kind of similar to that one, know when to take a break from the heaviness of it all.
Right.
It's similar to one of your points, but I am right now taking a very hard break from all things abuse except for this podcast. I'm not answering emails. I'm not answering comments on Facebook. I'm not answering direct messages. I'm not speaking, doing trainings. I'm not doing any of that right now. And I don't know how long that'll last.
Right.
But I talked with my wife. That was a very personal decision. And we decided after 10 years it was time for me to just
Well,
breathe.
knowing you, Jimmy, closer than our listeners do, obviously, I have watched you just submerge yourself day and night for weeks on end into
For years on end.
reading, just reading everything you possibly could, interviewing people, talking with people, writing volumes to your dad, and digging through all that information. And after a while, it just dries you out
Yes.
because it drains so much life out of you.
Yes.
So I think your decision is wise.
Yeah.
Because you have a wife, you have a family, you have a life, and we need you here. We need
That's
you
it.
in your wholeness. So I think we all have to make decisions like that at some point. How far do I go with what I'm doing? And please know that whatever we do, I still say when it's pure and from the heart, that's what God wants us to do. God doesn't want us to burn ourselves out to the point of where we're so weary, we just get discouraged and depressed.
Yeah.
So
I totally agree. Yeah,
Right.
life is too short
Yes.
to just be so overwhelmed and
Right.
so overburdened that you can't enjoy life.
Right.
So, it's all about balance and
It is.
knowing when to take that break.
And I think the podcast has greatly taught us that.
Yeah.
Greatly taught us
Yeah.
that.
Number 14, this one's really important for me, and it has been from the beginning. Learn to think for yourself. Becoming dependent on others puts you in a really vulnerable position all over again. I've never been one to regurgitate information, to try to memorize statistics and whatever, and then just regurgitate that. You've got to be able to think for yourself because life is messy. There is no manual for dealing with this kind of heaviness. You've got to learn to think for yourself, and which leads me to number 15. You've got to learn to trust yourself. Nobody knows you like you do. You have to believe that you are capable, which ties into your point number 1, which is you don't have to be a pro to help people.
You don't.
You don't have to. You don't have to be experienced. You don't have to be a professional. You just have to care.
Right. That's it. That is it in a nutshell.
But you have to
In a
trust
nutshell.
yourself.
It's funny, Alex and I had this talk. I'll just insert this real quickly this morning. She said, I used to feel embarrassed to invite people over because my house sometimes would be dusty or cluttered or whatever. And I said, and she said, and I've learned a lot of lessons in the past several years. She said, don't let that stop you from spending time with your friends.
Yeah.
And I said, amen, amen, amen. I learned that a long time ago. People are not looking for perfection in us. They're just looking for a heart that cares. And that's it. They can look beyond the messiness of our outward, our exterior. What they want is the kindness of our hearts.
Yes.
Period.
Absolutely.
Period. So don't wait for perfection in your life to help someone.
Yeah.
Just help. Be an encouragement.
Number 16. This has been kind of a hard lesson. We've talked about this quite a bit on this podcast, but kind of interesting I'm saying this because we teach people to warn, we warn people about abusers, but we need to be aware of others, advocates included, who will exploit you for your time and your money. If you have people who are asking for your money, who are chasing you down, who are demanding time from you, crossing boundaries, trash talking you, I was telling Mom it's like kind of going on right now. Like I've been off the internet literally for a week, and then I get on, start checking notifications on Facebook, and I'm like being trash talked, and I'm like, by another advocate. You don't do that to each other, like
No.
making assumptions and really trash talking people.
Right.
It does go on, and it goes on often, unfortunately, even in the advocacy community. So just be aware of others. Create that safe space. And my way of dealing with it, at least right now, is like before I used to send messages to you. I would screenshot things and I'd be like, look what so-and-so's saying about me. Now I just ignore it. I really don't have the
I think
capacity
that's part of
to,
the flow,
to
this
care.
crazy flow of life. That
Yeah.
people, it happens. That's all.
Yeah.
And it happens whether we like it or not. Just stay uninvolved in that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's what the
Because you can get consumed with that.
you can,
and it really,
it's like
I mean,
treading mud. Really, you're not going to go anywhere. You just keep treading and digging up the mud. And
Right.
what good is it?
yeah, you're feeding into
Yeah.
to that kind of
Right.
nonsense. And I've been trashed multiple times. And before it used to, like, I would get sick to the stomach, and I'd be like, I'm being named publicly,
I don't
and
think
drugged through the
anybody
mud and
likes
trashed.
that. Nobody likes that. But like with my grief site, that's happened to me before.
Oh yeah.
know,
It's happens too often.
It happens. But it's just people get upset and they say things and do things out of their anger or pain, hurt. And it's best to just step back, keep yourselves in a safe spot, set your
Yeah.
boundaries, and life goes on.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, life goes
Stay
on.
focused on what you're doing, and
Right,
don't get
right,
sidetracked
right.
by all of that. So, number 17, keep hoping. There are tons of reasons to believe that things will improve in this world. Again, not sugarcoating anything. There is definitely a lot of really horrific things. There's a lot of abuse. Abuse will always be here. But keep hoping, because, like Mom said, there are churches that get it. There has been a explosion of people joining advocacy, writing books, writing blogs, starting support groups. There is so much more out there than there was 10 years ago.
As I hear you mentioning these things, because 10 years ago, 5 years ago, wasn't like that.
Yeah.
When-
Even podcasts.
Yeah.
We were one of the
Oh,
only
yeah.
podcasts
Right.
that
And-
that routinely talked about abuse. And
Right.
now, I mean, there are so many good ones out there.
Which is a great thing.
Yeah.
People have it on
Really
their
good podcast.
radar. It is on the radar. Laws have been changed. They're
Mm-hmm.
being changed, maybe not as quickly as we'd like, but they are being changed.
Yeah.
There are good things happening. Stay hopeful.
Yeah. And then number 18, I think a lesson that we learned, I've had to learn it the hard way. You're so inundated with horrible stuff constantly, and you see bad stuff every single day. You hear bad stuff, you see bad stuff, you see bad responses, you see so many people getting it wrong, their responses to abuse. And you need to look for the good in people. Not people doing bad. I'm not saying look for the good in abusers. I'm not saying that. I don't think there is any good in abusers. But look for the good in other people. There are good people out there. They may not talk about abuse. It may not be on their radar. It wasn't on my radar until
Right. It
Alex
happened.
came into my
Right.
office.
Exactly right.
Just
Exactly
because
right.
it's not on people's radar doesn't mean that they're bad people or they're uninterested. There are good people out there in the world. Look for the good in good people, and be inspired by that.
Right.
Number 19, remember how short life is and live it to the fullest. I think all this stuff kind of ties together. Don't get consumed and self-consumed and so wrapped up in the disgustingness of abuse that you forget to live life.
There's so much beauty that surrounds us. I take my morning coffee every morning outside, so that I can just hear, see, breathe nature.
Yeah.
And that just fills me, it fills my cup like nothing else, really, because there's a closeness to God, there's a purity within nature, there is something that just connects me to God and to others so much when I'm in nature. Find that something that does that for you. There is beauty all around us.
Yeah.
There is love all around us. We can feel the most alone, but yet if you stop and look around, you'll see you're not totally alone. We are surrounded by love. We truly, truly are. We just need to step back sometimes and find it.
Yeah, I went out this morning. I couldn't sleep last night. I woke up after I got about maybe 2 hours of sleep. So I'm kind of dragging right now.
You know, you've been like that since a kid. You
I
do
know.
know that.
So I just went out. I went outside. I don't know. It was probably 4 o'clock this morning. And I just went out and sat outside and listened to the birds.
Isn't
The
it
birds were just
wonderful?
starting to
I
wake
love
up.
it.
And
Yep, love it.
the other night I went out when the lunar eclipse happened, and I just sat outside. I mean, there was nobody outside. It was so quiet and so peaceful. And I'm looking up at the moon, and I'm just watching this eclipse for like an hour. I just sat. I sat by the edge of my flower bed, and I just watched the moon for
Isn't
an
it?
hour.
It's so peaceful.
Coyotes
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
were crying in the background, and all this, all the noises of nature. And
Yeah.
I was like, man, I could be in bed right now, collapsed after a long day, and not soak any of this in.
Right. I know
So,
what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just live life.
Right.
And then finally, number 20, always be kind, even when we're angry. And trust us, we've been angry a lot.
Right. Yeah.
We still should treat people with kindness and decency. This goes back to my point about being aware of others, especially since COVID. I saw so much ugliness creep into the advocacy community. Kelly Downing did an excellent podcast on people being so intolerant in the advocacy community. And she said, the very thing that we're fighting, these churches that are doing this to survivors, we're doing it to each other.
Has happened to within the advocacy.
Yeah. So, just remember to always be kind. There are days where you're going to be angry and you're going to want to spout off and you're going to want to, lash out at people. Don't do it. Take a breather. If you're so worked up inside, shut your computer off and shut it off for the rest of the day and go walk outside.
Amen. Get out.
Do not
among
hit that
nature.
keyboard
Yes.
when you're
No,
angry.
No. Oh, it's never good. Never good when that happens. No.
So, yeah, I mean, kindness is really important. And, this is one thing you guys should know. I hope you know by now, after 200 episodes. I have zero tolerance for abuse and abusers. I just don't. Zero, none, zip, zilch.
Nor do I. I am right there with you. I don't express it as often as you, but I certainly do live it. There's no tolerance there.
But even with abusers, I mean, I would love to be unkind, but I'm not. And I've treated abusers very bluntly. I've spoken brutally to them because they do brutal things. But I still maintain some level of decency, and you can still not tolerate abuse, and you can still keep abusers out of your places. We have it written in our policy.
Right.
Known sex offenders are not permitted to step foot inside of our church building. They're just not.
Right.
And I don't apologize for that, and we will never
Right.
change that policy. But that doesn't mean that we still can't be decent to people.
I think what you're
maintain
saying
decency
is
and
we are
kindness.
all human beings. Life is sacred to all. God is the one who gave us life. It's just very hard to imagine that a life, a heart that came from God could turn that black.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to often lash out and really kill. Just get rid of that person. That's how much we
Which
hate.
is a normal response. And
Right. That's how much we hate what they have done. But that isn't what God wants us to do. And we have to pull back a bit. And that's not saying tolerate what they do, but it's just
not at
saying,
all. Never
no,
tolerate it.
No. Just
But
saying
be
have
a decent human being.
Yeah. Just have the respect of life that God would have us do.
Yeah.
And I think, Jimmy, you've done an exceptional job of that, especially with your dad. I often would look back and not understand how you could do that. That hasn't been easy. Because
It's not easy.
No. Because he betrayed you, betrayed our family in the most horrible way. But yet I've seen you, I've heard you still talk to him with a degree of respect that God would have you.
Yeah,
Not respect.
I wouldn't say respect, but decency.
Respect, decency. That's the better word.
Yeah, and it's not because he deserves it, because
No.
he doesn't. And, quite frankly, I don't have many nice words at all to say about him still. But, yeah, those face-to-face interactions are very blunt. Very, 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 very blunt.
Mm-hmm.
But
you
it's
didn't
always
go
done
in punching and kicking
No,
with
and-
two guns that were loaded.
No, it's
that
always
type of
yeah,
thing.
always a
Right.
level of decency and again,
He
it's
knows
just
where you stand.
don't
exactly.
let people change your heart and turn
That's
you
what-
into
There you go.
a really ugly person
Something
who
that you do not want to be.
something that you're not.
Yes, right.
So just
Yes.
be kind, be yourself.
I think that is perhaps the most valuable lesson I've learned along the way with these podcasts, that there's a lot of stuff we carry in our hearts, a lot of stuff. And pain changes people dramatically. Pain makes us think differently. It creates a certain a lack of trust in us, a jealousy, if you want to call it that, a whatever it is, and a dislike sometimes of God. And when we step back and we think about that, I think we're able to treat each other at least as a human being.
Yeah.
And that has been most helpful to me along the way on these podcasts.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's it. That's your list of 20. Happy 200th. I wish I had one of those birthday party things with the hat.
I have them at home. I should have
The
brought them.
noisemakers
Yeah.
that
I
has
have
a
whole
little
box full.
the little thing that
Yes.
curls out.
Yeah. Yes.
Man, a kazoo. I'd love to.
Firecracker to set off.
Yeah.
Not in the house. No.
Yeah, I feel like we need a cake or something.
We do.
Where are you on that one, patrons?
Yeah. Oh, yes. About it.
So anyway, thank you guys so much for
Yes.
sticking with us, and we just we love and support you guys, and we're very thankful for our audience and
Yes.
for our patrons, and you guys keep us going. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in to our 200th episode, and we'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.